Thank you. All right, so tonight we're just going to talk about credentialing matters. This falls under the core knowledge area of developing as a professional. Oh, there we go. So there. So let me just read the training. I promise I won't read every slide. That's wicked boring, but I will read the training description. So in this training, we're going to delve into why credentialing matters. We'll explore each component of the credentialing system and the significance that each part of it brings. And then we'll examine the multiple benefits of getting a credential. So join us as we learn about the New Hampshire Early Childhood Professional Credential and what value it can bring to you personally, but also to the profession and to your program. We're also going to talk about the way, we'll talk about the elephant in the room, like why do people not want to do this? And what are the barriers? And we're going to kind of address those as well. So my goal before the end of the evening is that you could hopefully state why getting a credential is important, name 3 benefits to getting a credential, explain why credentialing helps to professionalize the field, and then we can brainstorm some ideas to overcome some of the barriers, because there are definitely barriers that can get in the way because, life happens and often does. So what can we do to kind of overstep those barriers and work around them? And so, and I'm just going to read the chat box real quick. It says, Jessie just introduced herself. She says she works at a place to grow in Brentwood. She's the assistant director, curriculum coordinator, and lead teacher. Wow, you're a busy woman. And I'm interested in the training because I want to help her teachers understand why it's important. Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. Here we go. There we go. I have to shrink you guys because I keep moving you and you wind up being like right where I want to say. So what do you think? Have any of you ever been called a babysitter while you're at work? And what feelings did that invoke? You can put it in the chat box or you can unmute yourself, but how does that make you feel? I've got one coming in the chat. It's the pain of my existence. Yeah. That's fair. It used to drive me bonkers when I was a teacher. Same thing. And as a director, it used to really drive me insane. I would actually pull families into my office and have conversations with them when I was a director about how it really demeaned the work that my teachers were doing by calling them babysitters, because the expectation I have for someone who comes to babysit my children is very different than the expectation I have of one of my early childhood teachers. And so, we want to really move away from that, and credentialing can help with that. We're going to revisit that piece. All right. So I thought when Donna talked to me about this, I thought the best way to start was looking at the parts that go into the whole credentialing process and why they're important and why they were included. So the first piece that they collect is education. And there's been a debate now in the early childhood field for maybe 20-ish years about, I've heard directors say, I really just want someone who loves the kids. I just want someone who loves them, which is true. But we also need, the debate is, do we want education or do we want people who really love the kids? And I dare to venture to say that we need both. I'm sorry, let me just check this. Oh, and Caitlin introduced herself. She said she recently came out of class. Oh, and she has her bachelor's. Thank you so much for sharing, Caitlin. All right, sorry. So what they have is we really need both. We want people who love children and are passionate about being in the field because they work really well with children. It is painfully obvious when someone comes into an early childhood program who does not work well with children. You could have a bachelor's degree, a master, you could have a doctorate, and then you get in front of children and you just don't do it well. It's that, unfortunately, is not something that you can typically teach. It is something like in their personality. However, the education part is really important too, because what I've seen is you get people who really love children and they are really great with them, but because they don't have the knowledge behind it, then they do things that they just don't realize are really poor mistakes that lead to horrible outcomes. I was at a training once at a national conference, and there was a family talking about how their newborn baby, 6 weeks old, just started childcare, was put down in a car seat to sleep, didn't have the neck control, the baby suffocated and died. simply not because that provider didn't love that child or care for that child, but she simply didn't have the knowledge that comes with education to say, oh, we want to leave those infants laying flat on their backs. So education, so we look at the education piece because it's important, because we want to have some of that background. So they want to give credit for the people who have given some of those pieces, but not to underlay that love for that passion for children is important too. Then they look at work experience. And I think that that's really important, because if I think back to when I first started 20 plus years ago, I am not the same teacher that I was then that I am now. I have so much more tools in my kit, in my little toolbox, and so many things that I had no clue about when I was first starting out. I was kind of clueless about those things. So giving credit to work experience is another piece of the credential, because we want to honor the fact that you might come into the field with a lot of experience, and that experience is valuable and has made you a better teacher than you were 5 years ago, just because you've seen so much development, you've seen so many great things happening. The credential looks at professional development because we all want to continue to grow. We can't be the same teacher next year that we are this year. We need to improve our skills and increase our competencies and move forward. And looking at our professional development helps us to make sure that we're doing those things. My husband is a PA, he works in the medical field, and he also has to do professional development just like we do. And he has to collect his and present them to the board so that he can be recertified, so he can still continue to practice medicine. Then we have the professional development plan. The professional development plans are just such a great tool to create intentionality. If we know what we want to work on for the next year, then when we do our professional development, when we take the trainings or we get the coaches, we are gearing it so that we can grow in the areas that we're saying we want to grow in. It just helps to make us be intentional teachers. Just like we want to be intentional with the activities and the things we choose with our children, we want to be intentional about our professional development. And lastly, we get to the professional activity units, which is really interesting because I have never been credentialed while the professional activity units have been in place. They left shortly after they were taken away, and I got credentialed right after that process happened for the first time in the state of New Hampshire. And then I just re-credentialed at the end of August, and the new one was released in the beginning of September. So I just missed out. I'm actually part of the credentialing challenge this semester with my students in one of my classes, and we're doing it as a team. So I haven't technically written mine or done mine yet, but within 2 weeks, it'll all be handed in. But professional activity units is about giving back to the field. It's about supporting the field and giving back, because this is a field where we really want, early childhood folks tend to be warm and fuzzy, and we need to get back, and we need to say, these are the things that are important, and support those. And so they've added professional activity units, and I'm really excited. And I don't know if you've had the time to go through them, but a lot of the pieces are either about like improving quality in a program, or developing your own professional, or the professionalism of helping another teacher develop. So it's all good things that bring positive outcomes to the field. So, all right, let me click my slide. There we go. So let's talk about professionalizing the field. We are more than babysitters, so much more. We write lesson plans. We look at we observe our children on a daily basis. We look at what they're doing, and then we make active choices based on where they are to design our lesson plans and to help move them, make steps towards progress. That is not what a babysitter does. A babysitter makes sure that my child is safe when I leave, and 3 hours later when I come back, they're still safe. They're not working on those developmental pieces. They don't have the knowledge in child development that we do, right? So when we talk about professionalizing the field, and we want to remove that idea or that stigma that we're babysitters. So one, we could do things like increase our wages. And so what I will say is that not much good came out of COVID. It was a hot mess and very, very hard on the ECE field in general. But one thing that I feel like really did come out of that was that we are now recognized as an essential force. We are essential to the workforce of the country, the state, and I think that that's important. And as we continue to professionalize our field, I am hoping to see increases in wages for ECE teachers across the way. I know that that's a national initiative. And I think that when we do things like getting credentialed, it helps to show that we are professionals in our field and that we deserve that pay increase. I also think that when we go to do credentialing, that we already have so many of the pieces. It's not that you don't have this. And they've created the credentials so that you can start in any spot. Really, you could be, I have students who are doing it that could start, and then me who's been in the field for like, 20 plus years, who can also still do it. So a lot of the pieces are already there. You just have to put the puzzle together. It's really all it is. And I really feel like the soon as our profession sees ourselves as professionals and we convey ourselves to the community that way, others will start to see that too. And I think it has to be, like I would stop families and say, I really appreciate that you love our teachers, but we can't call them babysitters. And let me tell you why. And I think that as directors and as leaders in the field and as people who are organizing, that is a theme that we need to put out there, that we have to see ourselves as professionals and help others to see it as well. It went too, sorry. All right, so now I want to do an activity. So I'm going to hit enter. So I just put a link in here that will take you to, and I'm going to stop my share so that I can see, I'll share that screen. So if you click on the link, it will take you to an idea board. And I want you to write down, the beauty of the idea board is if you see that little plus sign, it'll give you a Post-it and you can write on it, and it's completely anonymous. So nobody will know who wrote what, but write down on a separate Post-it for each one. What are the barriers you have to getting a credential? When Annie and I wrote this, we came up with several in our brains, but I want to know what your barriers are. So go ahead and link that. I'm going to share my screen to this particular page so we can see them as they pop up. There we go. So go ahead and put in your barriers. I apologize. I'm getting a little bit of a cold, so I'm sorry I'm coughing on you. Let's see if we can get a few more in there. I'm going to give us about another minute because I'm suspecting that there's a few more out there. All right. All the information, understand. All right. I'm going to give it like 30 more seconds, and I would love for everybody to put at least one thought in there. All right. So we're going to come back to these in a few minutes and talk about how do we overcome these barriers? How do we work around them? So let me go back to the PowerPoint. Oh, I love it. One more came up. That's beautiful. Excellent. So keep putting them in there. I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint, but feel free to go back and add a few more in. And I love that I still see more coming. That is fabulous. So go ahead over the next couple of minutes and put some more in if you have more that pop into your brain, even if it's in another minute or two. All right, so let's talk about the benefits of getting a credential, and then we're going to circle back to how do we overcome those barriers. All right, so some of the benefits that Annie and I came up with, or that are really just out there, is one, it promotes individual excellence. If you're looking at, here's my education, here's my work experience, here's my intentionality for my professional development, it's promoting you to be a better teacher next year than you are this year. It's just helping you improve yourself. So we thought that that was a really big benefit to getting a credential. It helps to showcase your knowledge, your skills, and your contributions to the field. So when you look at this, you can say, when you are talking about it, like, these are the things I've done to help the field along. These are the things that I know. These are the skills that I have, because you're looking at all those pieces. It encourages that intentionality piece, specifically with the professional development plans. It really supports being a reflective practitioner. When we use the professional development plans, we're self-assessing and we're thinking about where we are, and we can reflect on those pieces and how can I improve the things that I'm doing, whether it's my knowledge or my skills or my attitude about something. We're becoming more reflective practitioners. I understand that the job market right now is not something where we really need to market ourselves, because we are in a time, unfortunately, where there is huge teacher shortages. However, when that has not always been the case, and it will hopefully not always be the case, I hope to see something change in the next few years or sooner if possible. But your credential is a really significant marketing tool. It says, hey, this is what I have. This is what I'm bringing to the table, not only as just an individual, but as a program. It's helpful to know when a teacher has everything, when you're interviewing. This is a great way to just market yourself and say, look at what I've got, here it is. And that I care enough about my profession and I care enough about what I do to have one. And I think as a director, when I was hiring staff, something like that was meaningful to me, because I was looking for people who wanted to be in the field for as long as I could keep them in the field. If I could get you to be at my program for 20 years, then kudos, that's amazing. So having a credential shows me that you cared enough to go through all the malarkey to get the credential to actually have it. And that shows that you have some commitment to the field. Now, those were all kind of individual, personal based. But now if we think about it in a broader scale, it is a pathway with the new QRIS system, new quality recognition and improvement system. Having your credential is a pathway to quality. Programs need to have so many staff have a credential to move up the pathway. So coming to a program, already having your credential or having your credential in a program is something that you need for the state of New Hampshire if you want to continue to move up. So that's important on a program level. Also, as a program director or as a program leader, having your teachers have credentials is a great selling point when you have parent tours. So it's another way not just to market yourself as an individual, but to market programs and say, look, we have really high quality staff. This is what we do, and we care enough to have these things and display them, show them, be excited about it. You know, I fully believe that Donna talked earlier in the night about April 3rd being the celebration. And I know there's a really long title for that and it's not it, but for the celebration. And I don't know if you've ever been to a celebration, but it's an amazing event where we celebrate each other, and to watch people go across the field and be able to get all their certificates and all their credentials. It's just a really cool feeling. It's something that I've missed in the field in the last few years that we haven't been able to do. All right. So let's circle back for a second. Now, picture in your head all of those benefits that we just talked about. And now go back to those barriers. Donna, can you launch my poll question? Or can I don't know, can you launch it? Thank you. All right, so we have a poll question about, do the benefits outweigh the barriers? It could be yes, it could be no, you could be, I still don't know. And that's okay. And then we're gonna start talking about how do we break down those barriers? How do we knock them down? I have one more person who hasn't responded. So if you have just a second, you can get it in there. That would be amazing. I'm going to give it, I'll give it like 20 more seconds. Oh, there we go. We got them all. So I'm going to end the poll. All right. So Donna, am I sharing my poll results? Yes. No. Yes. Can you thumbs up? Because I can't actually hear you. Groovy. All right. So we have two people who said, yes, the benefits outweigh the barriers. And one person said, I'm not sure. And that's okay. Let's talk about how we get rid of those barriers so that by the time we finish this training, everybody's like, yes, yes, it does. So let me stop that share. Close stop. All right. So let's go to your, I'm sorry, my computer and I are having a moment together. Let's go back to the idea board and let's talk about these. And then I have a slide too, where we might talk about some of them, but I want to use yours more than the ones that I came up with. All right, so getting all the information together, I can tell you that I agree that if you're the first time, or if this isn't something that you do on a regular basis, figuring out how to get all the pieces together that you need can be super overwhelming. There's some really great news. One, Child Care Aware of New Hampshire will offer technical assistance, which is coaching and support to anybody who wants it for free. And they will help you figure out how to get all those pieces together. So yes, it is definitely overwhelming, specifically if you've never done it. Now you guys are talking about, I'm talking about overwhelming, and I've told you I've done this more times. I used to work at Child Care Aware of New Hampshire about 1.5 million years ago. And so I used to coach on this. So I know that I haven't done mine, and I have it due by February 28th. And I know that I could probably pull mine out in about an hour or two because I've done it so many times that it's just not overwhelming to me. So my recommendation, when you feel like it gets overwhelming, reach out to the free resources that are there and available to you to help you with it, because they want to help you. That is truly one of the sole purposes they're there to support providers. So that's, I think that that could be something that really helps to get you over that hump, is just having someone kind of hold your hand and walk you through it, because it takes away some of that pressure of being overwhelming. Understanding the specialist pieces. And I think when you mean the specialist pieces, I'm not 100% sure. It's either the individual components, or it could be the competencies. I'm not sure which one it is, although we can talk about each of them. Understanding the individualized pieces, again, I think that having someone like Child Care Aware of New Hampshire come out and support you in that, or even if you don't want to bring an outside entity in, if you have a long-term employee or someone, some of you who are on the call, the more you get yourself familiarized, and then you can coach your staff through it or coach your colleagues through it, can help to understand those specialized pieces. If you're talking specifically about the competencies, those are things where I feel like the more you have your hands in it, the more you can support people. I worked with my students 2 weeks ago on them creating their own professional development plans. And what I had them do is think of the ideas in their head before they ever went to the competency book, so that they could find then they are only looking for the ideas that they needed and where they needed to go. And it was really important that, but sometimes we have to think outside of where we think it's going to be. So that's why, like, the more you have your hands in it, and having a professional like Child Care Aware come and support you, because they can be like, my students were like, well, I can't find it. And I'm like, what are you looking for? And I'm like, it's because you're looking in this section and it's in that section, simply because I know that they tried to not duplicate things. And so they streamlined it. So where we thought it was going to be, sometimes it can be it's not in more than one place. So we have to look in a different place that fits, but isn't the fit that they were thinking in their heads. Don, I saw you on mute. What can I do for you?
That was actually dealing with the endorsements. So like faculty mentor, she said a lot of the teachers get sad that they have lower levels. Yes. And she said, sorry for the confusion.
Oh, no worries. And thank you.
That the new one, the levels are a little bit different in the new one. So people are probably going to qualify for things they may not have qualified for in the past.
Correct. And then I have not to go back to but I have some students who, one qualified because she was under the old system with an old job. Now she comes back because they revised. It's not that, and she's like, I'm going down a level. It's not really that you're going down. It's just a revised system. Don't look at it as I'm going down a list. They've completely revised the system, and you're just coming in at a different place than you had on the old system. I pulled up the credentialing book here, and I will take it to the lattice that has the different specialties so we can talk about those for a sec.
Thank you. So sorry, I'm on the move. So
no worries.
What I meant was, yes, because when you get to the lattice for the things like faculty and mentor, it doesn't actually, it doesn't explain it, I feel like, in what it means. Like, could you qualify? Because I personally have 2 of them, but I'm like, could it be more? But I know for the teacher level, I do know they've changed. I've actually credentialed a long time, so I was around with the PAUs before, but I know a lot of teachers get kind of frustrated that maybe they have 18 credits in ECE, but they don't actually have in associates in ECE, so their level's not the same, things like that.
Right.
That's kind of what I meant.
No, and I get that, and that goes back to like that education piece, and so. All right, so let me address the education part, because that you brought that up, and then I'll go back and just then I'll talk about what's on my screen. So the education piece, and it's tricky because I get that I didn't get credentialed for the longest time in New Hampshire because I came from another state, and my bachelor's is in elementary education, and my master's is in education with a specialization in early childhood. And I was downright fearful to get it, that they weren't going to count. And I'm like, I don't want to have a master's degree and them tell me that I can't qualify for something, because I put all this work and time and energy into my degrees, and to not have something count. So I was so concerned about doing it. But then when the credentialing specialist at the time really worked with me, and I got her some training descriptions and we did things, and it really wound up all coming together. So the first thing I say is, if you have something like I had where you're concerned about that, then reach out to Annie and work with the credentialing specialist, because sometimes it works and it might work out better than you had thought. As far as having, like, I have 18 credits, but not an associate's degree, what I would recommend is there are some, and I can't give you an associate's degree if you don't have an associate's degree, but what you can do is there are some amazing resources out there right now to support that. So there's something called the Early Childhood Tuition Assistance Grant, which will pay for part or all of a class if you work 20 hours in an early childhood program. And I know that they currently still have money in their budget for this year, or at least the one for the community college system does. I can't speak to Granite State. I don't work with them. Not that I don't work with them, but I don't work for them. So that's really cool. Then there's something called Teach New Hampshire, which is a scholarship program that works with the program. It works with the student, and it's a scholarship, and somehow in that the student only winds up paying for a small portion. The program will pay for a small portion, and then Teach New Hampshire pays for a really large portion, and it covers not just your early childhood classes, but also your gen eds, which is great because the ECTA will not cover gen eds. So that is like a really amazing tool that can support that. In addition, there's also things like the apprenticeship program, which I can't speak to as well as I can about Teach New Hampshire, but the apprenticeship program is another program that's there to support students and give them a pathway to getting those other, Donna, do you know if that's a degree or do they work towards CDAs?
That's actually a CDA program. I just helped somebody get their CDA through it, which it is still fantastic. And they do count prior work hours.
Yep.
So it might not take you the full time. Like the one I worked with, she got it in under a year, her CDA.
Right.
But for those people that already have credits, it's a little hairy. So
I would have them look at like the Teach New Hampshire stuff that might, I mean, because again, I'm not able to change the system, but if we can't change the system, then how can we support them to get them where they want to go? And so that might be a program that's really useful and helpful to you. Also, I can't speak to other colleges, but I know at my college, we're a Perkins thing. We have Perkins money coming in, which means that like I have extra money to give students if they have a child and they're trying to take a class and they need to pay for childcare. Like, so those are things that they need to talk to the specific colleges about, because everybody has how they wrote their pieces are all different, but there could be things there that support that. Donna just dropped some URLs about those pieces. Thank you, Donna, for doing that. So those are some really cool pieces that could help support if someone's feeling like, man, I only have 18, but I really want this. And, you know, I want to move up that lattice or up that piece. That might be a way to support them. At least there's some pieces that can kind of help with that barrier. So then somebody asked about the different specialist pieces. So when you were talking about the specialist pieces, were you specifically asking like, what does each one mean? Or are you specifically asking like, what do you need to get it? Excuse me.
I think it's a little bit of both, because some of them, if you go back through the book, you can find them in the definition part. And it made sense. And that's how I realized that I could, for instance, for me, like I could get the coach and the mentor, but like the facility, like, or faculty, I'm sorry, I can't read. I don't have it in front of me right at the moment, but
no, you're good.
they didn't all quite make sense on who could qualify to get it or what those were, at least to me anyways.
Yeah, I'm just going to move you guys because you were right over my thing. All right, so let's take a look. So to be a trainer, I'll start at the beginning and then kind of move. I can spend like another 5-ish minutes and then I want to move on to some of the other ones. But to be a trainer, you have to have a minimum of an associate's degree or a minimum of associate's degree and 24 credits in approved coursework. So if you have an associate's degree in early childhood, you're great. If you have an associate's degree in liberal arts, but you have 24 credits in early childhood, that covers it too. Or you could have a bachelor's degree in a field of study appropriate to the specialization. So if you were a trainer in, I don't know, something, math, and you have a bachelor's degree in math and you were teaching something with math, then that would let you be a trainer for that particular course subject. So you have to have at least 3-year or a minimum of associate's degree and an infant toddler ECE credential. So then there's the for work experience for a trainer, you have to have 3 years of work experience, and you have to be planning and implementing at least 12 hours of ongoing training to adults over a 1-year period. But I will tell you that you only have to do that one time. You have to prove it 1 year. And once you've proven it once, you don't have to prove it again. I did not know that when I was getting re-credentialed one time, and I was like, oh, and I rushed to get it all done and then didn't need it. So that's good to know. And so you need 24. So which is interesting is that for this, sorry, I made it big because I was like, oh, I can't see anything. And now I can't see all of it. There we go. And that's too small. Good gravy. All right. So for the ongoing professional development, you now need to have 24 hours of professional development, which is more than licensing requires. So you want to look at how much professional development you're doing over the course of the year. And when you go to get your re-credential, you would need 72 hours. And then for your PAUs, you'd have to have 4. And for re-credentialing, you'd have to have 12. So really, they're just looking at if you have an associate's degree in ECE, and 3 years of work experience and 24 hours and 4 PAUs is kind of what they're looking for a trainer. If you wanted to be a mentor, same kind of piece. You need the associate's degree in ECE or a degree in ECE with the 24 credits. So the same pieces there, but on that one for a mentor, they want you to have 5 years of experience. So you need a little more experience to be able to do it. And then the other pieces are all the same. So it's really just talking about, I need 2 more years of experience in the field. With a consultant, that changes a little bit. For a consultant, you need your bachelor's in early childhood or a minimum of a bachelor's degree with the appropriate coursework in the specialization area, like we talked about before, or a minimum of a bachelor's degree in the MACTE pieces in the infant and toddler credential. Again, you need that 5 years of experience. So this one doesn't go up in experience, but it goes up in your education piece. For the coach, same as before with the consultant, you need the bachelor's degree in ECE, special ed, social work. So what they did here is they broadened some of the degrees you can have it in, which was nice because it used to be like very, very specific. So you can get it if you have a couple different degrees. You need that 5 years again. Still have to have 24 hours of professional development. But this one, when you look at your professional development plan, they have a little bit more specifics here. It's like a professional development plan based on self-assessment of 4 competencies, which I guess all of those are 4, I lied, and competencies of coach feedback form. So there's a whole feedback form. If you want to be a coach, you need to provide that along with it. So that's new to that particular one. And you still have to do your PAUs. You want to be a faculty and you want to be like an adjunct, or you want to have my job, then you need a master's degree in early childhood or a minimum of a master's degree with 24 coursework. So my master's, again, is like an education with a specialization in early child. So it pulled more than 24 credits in, but my master's doesn't fully speak to early childhood, although that was my specialization. So most of my coursework went there. You still have to have 5 years of experience, and then you have to have experience planning and implementing at least 24 hours of group training over a 2-year period. So you have to provide trainings, whether it's to your staff, to somebody else's staff, at a conference, but you have to get 24 hours of that training in to show that you can kind of work with adults and adult education, which kind of has its own stuff to do. And then again, you need that 24 hours, and you need a professional development plan based on the self-assessments and 4 professional activity units. So hopefully that clears it up a little bit and breaks it down. Let me go back. I have to move you guys again.
I did want to just add in there that for those of you, I'm not sure, this might not even be something confusing, but the you only need to do 4 PAUs That's it. You don't have to do like 4 PAUs for each one. So which would, if you, was it 5 times 20 of them, you're only doing 4.
Right.
And
Competencies too.
Yeah, the competencies as well. And it's the same for your training. You're only showing 24 hours of training, not 24 for each one of them.
Correct.
Also, the endorsement now, you're not paying for each individual endorsement. You're only paying for the actual credential.
Mm-hmm.
Where in the past you had to pay for each in like $5 per endorsement. Now it's just the credential, which I think is 15.
I think so. They lowered the cost. I think it used to be a little bit more in the old system.
I will pass this back to Jen.
Thank you. So, which Donna, that was a really great point, because you don't want to have to, one of those barriers, like you're talking about time and you're talking about this being overwhelming. And if you thought you had to do 16 PAUs or 16 professional competencies, that's super overwhelming. So it doesn't matter how many credentials you have, 4 is the most you would have to supply at this current time.
I don't mean to interrupt again. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
I think so you do have to pay for getting them, but it's one fee. So if you qualify for more than one, it's still just the one $15 fee. Does that make sense?
Yes. Although I am not, I think that if you had specific questions on payment, that I would contact the credentialing specialist, because honestly,
No, that is accurate, because I just did mine.
Okay.
That's why
Perfect.
I was more just clarifying, because you said you didn't know that was like an extra thing. So it's like, say you want to get coach and trainer, it's only one $15 fee. It doesn't matter how many of those ones, but if you're getting the teacher one and the added piece, then it'd be 30.
Gotcha.
That's what, sorry. I just happen to know that
Thank you
answer,
for the
so I just wanted to
clarification. No, that's perfect. Thank you. All right, so let's hit a couple more of these because we are rapidly running out of time. So resumes is another barrier. Oh, resumes can be tricky. What I can tell you is that Word has become very helpful in that. And they have created templates that you can literally plug your stuff into. So if you're working, because it sounds like most of you are going to be working with staff to support them in creating these things. So what I would do is pull a template that is convenient, that's going to work for you, and then ask your people to bring you, or to bring the ideas of like, how many places have you worked? Bring those pieces with you. What is your education? Bring those pieces with you, and then plug it into a template that's already created, which thank goodness Word is like friendly and wonderful and has helped you. That is also something Child Care Aware of New Hampshire can support, but I think like whenever you can have like a template or something like that just makes it a little bit easier, definitely makes, Google Docs has free templates as well. Thank you, Donna. So I think having like those, because 5 years ago, 10 years ago, they didn't have those. You had to kind of create your own pieces. So I think having that kind of stuff, and also if you have somebody who does like a killer job and like a stellar job in it, promote your people from within and be like, hey, they put this together beautifully, and let them support some of their coworkers. It makes them feel great about themselves, and then they're supporting someone else. If you can give them like time out of the class, and again, I understand that staffing is hard, but if you can give them some time out of the classroom and say, hey, sit down and work with this person, then it kind of builds both people up, which is a great thing. All right, so money. Yep, it definitely costs money to do it. What I would say, and what I recommend, is if money is a concern for the program or for the individual, use the credentialing challenge. They offer it every year and they will pay for your credential. Also, I didn't know this until very recently. If you use the ECTA grant, they will also give you credit towards getting a credential. So that will also support the $15 that credential costs. So I totally understand that money can be a barrier. So if those things are, then plan to do this with your staff. So you're using the credentialing challenge to do it for you so that you don't have to pay that piece. Time is so tricky because it's like the one thing we just can't. If I could figure out a way to make time for myself, that would be like and I would be rich. But I don't know how to do that. But what I can say is that when this gets tricky and time becomes an issue, then we have to start thinking outside of the box and how do we make this work? So what I would recommend is, again, using the resources that are available. Child Care Aware can come in and help you, or it doesn't, some entity, but Child Care Aware does it for free, and they're the ones I know about. But they come in, they can do it for free and help you, and they know what they're doing. So when you know what you're doing, the process, like I said, I can get this done in like 2 hours because I've done it so many times. I've got this. When you don't know what you're doing and you're kind of working your way through, it can take a much longer period. So use your resources to minimize your time. Still going to take time, but you can make it take a lot less if you use the resources you have available to you. Also, what I have found is that doing it in groups, I think is really helpful. So like if you're feeling, because if you're all working on it together and then you just throw questions out where like sometimes you're trying to do it and then you get a roadblock and you're like, I don't know what to do. And you kind of like, I'm just going to walk away from this. But if you're like, hey, friend, what am I doing here? And they give you thoughts, it just helps to keep that process going. And when you can keep it going faster, it's less time. So you just have to figure out the ways to work smarter, not harder, and to utilize your resources as much as possible. The new parts like the PAUs. I was really intimidated again because I had never used the PAUs before, so I was really intimidated. But as I was going through them, because I was trying to find ones for my students, and I'm like, oh, what can they use that they've already? Because this is all competencies, and PDPs are all about what you're going to do. PAUs are what have you done. So I was looking through, I'm like, what have my students done in previous coursework? So they're not reinventing the wheel, because who has time for that? So we were looking through, and there's really a lot of pieces that your teachers are already doing. They're already doing it. They just need to document it. Like there's ones where like I observed a child and created lesson plans because of that observation. I would bet money that your teachers are already doing that. Then it's like, hey, I observed a child and then I implemented them, or I reflected upon them. I built a bulletin board. There's so many different options and choices that I understand that it can be intimidating, but if you're the leaders, I would go through and kind of cherry pick the ones that you think are the most, like the ones that your teachers are most likely have done, so that they can be like, oh yeah, I got this one. Oh yeah, I've got that one. And for teachers who are, depending on what level they're at, they might only need 2, like it depends on how many they'll need. But some of the PAUs are worth 6 PAU credits. And sometimes teachers only need 2. So it depends on what it is. But those can be really helpful. And, you know, it's like some are like, hey, volunteer in doing this, or like sit on an advisory board or things like that. And like, I know that if you reach out to different places, I'm always looking for people to sit on my advisory board because I want the field's opinion on how to make my program the best it could possibly be. So look out for the organizations that have, like, it's usually, you know, your nonprofits or colleges, and look for those things where you can find, and there's like professional meetings. Well, Childcare Aware offers like, I don't know, I'm going to make the number up, but maybe 6 or 7 professional meetings a month, and they can go to one, and that's a PAU. So I think you just have to, as like the leaders of that, I would just kind of go in and cherry pick the ones so that it makes it a little easier for them. Caitlin, I saw you come on. Did you have a question, or did you just show yourself? Oop, you're muted.
Just showing myself because I got home.
Oh, well, it's nice to see you. All right. Not knowing how much to pay. You know what you can do? What I would recommend if you're not sure how much to pay, because I can tell you that the first time I credentialed, I totally sent it in wrong, is just ask the credentialing specialist. And she has an email. She's pretty responsive. I would just shoot her an email and say, hey, Annie, what am I supposed to, I'm doing this, and this. How much do I pay? Although I do think that the payment plan is a lot easier than it used to be. It used to be pretty confusing, and I do think it's a little easier now. But again, utilize those resources that are available to you. And she's there. That's her whole position, is meant to support people getting credentials. Getting my transcripts. Oh, they have made this easier. I know that it can be a pain in the butt, but they've made, now for most colleges, not all, most, you can literally just go online and do it. And it's like, you can literally just be like, hey, I need my transcript, boom, boom, boom. And you can do it online. You don't have to fill out it. Like you fill out the form online, but you don't have to have like a special form. You don't, I know that when I was graduating with my master's, I couldn't get my transcript because I needed to walk one paper from one building to another building. And at that time I had just moved. I had asked them 47 times if they had what they needed. They told me yes, yes, yes. And then I was like 9 months pregnant and couldn't drive back. So I wound up like, it was silly. But now they've made that process a whole lot easier. There is a transcript request form in the guidebook, but most colleges really do it online. You can electronically send it right to Annie. Then you don't have to worry that somebody accidentally opened it. Depending on where they went to school, most transcripts I think are like $5 to $10. Maybe if you went to some of the bigger universities, it could be more. If you went to like, you know, one of the really big colleges, but I think most of them are between like $5 and $10. And yeah, you can get them that way. What is tricky, and then when you do have to do the work, is when they went to a college that's no longer open, then you usually have to go through the Department of Education at that particular state, whatever state they were in. So there are some more hoops to jump. Also, what's tricky is if they are from out of the country and they need to have their transcripts translated. That is expensive. And I know more than I would have thought to have something translated like that. So that might be something where you need to like budget or think about, because it's it could be several $100s to have something, the transcript translated, if that's necessary. So that could be a hiccup if you have it, but then I would work with how you can, you know, fundraise resources or do something to kind of build that, because that one's a tricky barrier. All right, let me go back to my PowerPoint and from current slide. Maybe. You know, my computer has started to do this lately where it doesn't just want to show it how I want it to show it. All right, so here are some of the things that I came up with. Annie and I were like, oh, these are things we think people might say. And one was, again, the money. And we talked about that, utilizing childcare aware or the credentialing challenge to pay for it. Overwhelming, because we definitely have seen this. And what we didn't talk about is embracing when I had staff, or when I've worked with staff and they're like, this is just too hard, or I can't do this. Then I think it's about embracing a growth mindset. Instead of looking at it from, I can't do this, what are the resources and the tools I need to get this done? Or this is too hard for me. All right, so how can I break this up into small, manageable steps to make this something I can do? So it's helping your staff reframe their thinking, because they are already doing most of the pieces. They just have to gather them all together and put it in a pretty package, but they've got most of the pieces already there. And we talked about the time piece as well, so that's pretty good. And then here is, I just put a little slide that says Credentialing Matters. And then here are some resources that are available. I don't know if any of you have after school staff, I'm sorry, they call it out of school time. They changed that not recently, but relatively recently. If you have out of school time staff, across New Hampshire does the same type of work that childcare aware does. So they would support them through getting credentialed as well if they wanted, because they have their own credentialing system. And the credentialing emails on here, using New Hampshire Connections information system to use it as a platform to save all your professional development so that you're not looking around. I know that some programs don't give certificates anymore, but man, what a headache it used to be as a director trying to get them to get their certificates and get all those pieces together. So that's just a really nice housing place to put it all. So you can just hit print and they all come out. And so the guidebook has lots of information in there that I would use. And New Hampshire Connection, the website, has a lot of information. So those are all resources that I would tackle and use, because I think that they can be really helpful. We have about 4 minutes left. If I didn't answer a question for you, or if there's something that you think I can still help, please shout it out. Otherwise, I have one more question once I have answered questions, and then you guys are free to go, because you probably worked all day and are tired. I can imagine. So any other questions? All right. So if you look at the reactions, if you look at the bottom of your screen, there's like kind of like there's a bar, and it has, on mine it says like mute, stop video, and then participants, polls, blah, blah, blah. If you go to reactions, there's a thumbs up or a hand clap, and there's like some faces. So if you feel that the barriers, that the benefits now outweigh the barriers, can you give me a thumbs up? If you don't feel that way, can you give me like a sad face, or whatever this little, oh my goodness face is? Oh, look, I see lots of fingers. I love it. Oh, and look, that's new that it moves. Very fancy. You can see I don't use that feature all that often because I'm excited by it. All right, if there's no other questions, thank you so much for taking the time to come. I really hope this helps to support you, and talking to your staff about it. And again, utilize those resources, because if there's hiccups along the way, they're there to support you. Have a wonderful night. And if maybe some of you will be at my competency training tomorrow.